Hold on. Let the media get back in place.
She here. Christine.
All right. Hey, we're on the record. Come on up. Have a seat right there. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Couple things before I turn questioning over the attorneys. First of all, there's plexiglass in front of you and between us, plexiglass in front of the attorneys. I'll continue to wear my mask, but just as the bottom line being, you can choose if you wish to take your mask off, either for comfort or to be able to speak more clearly. Totally your choice. If you feel more comfortable keeping it on, absolutely keep it on.
All right.
But in either case, if you could slide a little bit closer to the microphone, that'd be wonderful. All right. First of all, I'm going to swear you in because everything you say has to be under oath. So raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror?
I do.
All right, thank you. First of all, you filled out a questionnaire, and it was very comprehensive. Thank you for taking the time to do that and getting it back to us. It gives us a lot of information to start with. Is everything on that questionnaire true?
Yes.
Now, it was a couple months ago, so in the meantime, you might have reflected on answers and thought of new information, or that maybe something was inaccurate, or maybe even your opinions have evolved since then. The bottom line being that you can give different answers on the questionnaire. It's very common. In fact, probably more common than not. So feel free to do so because we understand the dynamic of that process. As you sit here right now, is there any change or addition you can think of?
Yes, there is one.
Okay.
I don't have a Twitter account and I'm not on Facebook much, but when looking back at my responses, I did add a Facebook post.
Okay.
Concerns the case. So if I can read it.
Sure. Well, let's do that.
And I've changed a few things for anonymity.
That is very appropriate.
May 27th, 2020. Titles Justice for George Floyd. He died XXX miles from my house. I can hear the helicopters hovering over the protests at the 3rd Precinct. This is not 1930. This is not 1960. I hope we have finally reached a point when all police officers and elected officials are held accountable for their actions and inactions. The protests tonight will be ugly. Tear gas has been used, GAP munitions have been authorized, Target has been looted. I hope we can get through tonight without another death.
Okay.
In addition to that, the next morning I wrote,
just a kind of a heads up for you.
Yes.
If people are taking this down and a search on that, they might be able to find out who you are.
okay.
So can you paraphrase it for us?
Basically, I said last night I went to bed, I wasn't afraid because I'm white and the National Guard or the police would protect me. I feel comfortable in that, but I know that there are people of color who do not feel protected by the police. I said, basically, if I can go to bed not fearing a riot
Okay.
a number of blocks away from my house, you should be able to thank the police.
Okay.
But you should also focus on injustice.
All right. So essentially, if I can, I don't want to read too much in it, and lawyers will probably have you talk about that a little more.
Sure.
This was written at the time when this was a very emotional time. The wounds were raw, so to speak, as far
Yes.
as within the community. And you've kind of got two different observations there. What do you think? As time has passed, do you think you could be an impartial juror and move past the emotion and the opinion?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You can be objective.
Yes.
Okay. And the important thing is that when we ask you what do you know in the questionnaire and what you volunteered for, posts that are out there, is it's all right to have opinions, right? All right to form opinions based on what you saw and heard. The question is, can you put them aside? And sometimes the passage of time is enough for some people to do that. It's not as raw as it was at the time. Some people will say it's still a very emotional subject for me, and I cannot put it aside, and I cannot be impartial. Where do you fall on that?
I believe I'm a very centered person
Okay.
overall. I believe that I could put aside those criteria. I see this as a job interview for a job I do not want.
That's so funny because that's how I've referred to it for many people when they ask me, what is jury selection like? And I said, well, it's a job interview for a job most people don't want. Some people do want it, but I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yes, I'm trying not to say something that would obviously get me kicked off, and I'm not trying to get on the jury.
Okay. Well, do you feel kind of like the blank slate then? You don't have strong feelings to get on or off?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I feel a duty to, do my civic right.
Okay.
Or civic responsibility.
Excellent. The other part of that is, though, and we appreciate people who are willing to take on the civic duty of being a juror and not going to YouTube trying to figure out ways to get off or something like that. Usually we can spot that and don't enable it. But I appreciate that you are devoted to your civic duty. However, at the same time, your civic duty requires that all your answers truly be from not just the head but the heart, that you tell us whether you can be fair and impartial and that type of thing. It's not a failure as a juror if you say I can't, if that is the case. It is a failure if you say I can't if it's just to get off jury duty. So, and you haven't said anything like that, so you kind of get where I'm coming from?
Yes.
All right. So with that, have you read any, or more likely exposed to, any other news about this case since you filled out the questionnaire until today?
Yeah, there's a few things that have popped up on the ticker.
Right.
That I haven't been watching news, but things have come up that I've seen outside of news that.
Yeah, given the fact that we believe that the news is saturated with stories about this case, we understand when jurors get exposed to it inadvertently. And so what we want to know is, what have you specifically been exposed to? What information have you learned? Whether it was accurate or inaccurate is another question, but more importantly, what have you been exposed to specifically that you can recall?
There were questions that affected the sentencing on whether or not a third-degree murder charge could be brought upon. And I didn't follow that.
Okay.
I didn't pursue it, but I know that was an issue.
Okay.
And I did see that Minneapolis City did come to an agreement with the George Floyd family.
Okay. And did you see any amounts or anything
Yes.
like that?
Yes,
And
I did. 27 million.
Okay, let's talk about that specifically for a moment. Before, when you were coming in, before that settlement occurred, did you feel considering the passage of time and everything else, that you could be a fair and impartial juror.
Yes.
Did that news about the settlement push you off of the impartial dial, so to speak?
No.
Okay. How do you think it affected you, or what was kind of your reaction to it vis-a-vis the criminal case?
So, I guess the way the city has handled some of the aspects I don't necessarily agree with. And it didn't surprise me that the city settled on this case.
All right. Would you agree with me that that's a civil lawsuit, different laws, different legal issues, different parties? None of the parties are here.
Yes.
So what would happen, for example, if a juror who was also aware of that in the jury room said, hey, you know, we should also remember that there was this settlement and how that affected? What do you think you'd say to that juror?
Well, I'm sure the court, through the process, would bring that up, as the defense would probably give direction to say that those are two separate matters.
Right.
But I would rely on the court and the proceedings to direct the jurors on what they can focus on and what they can't focus on.
Right. And let's assume nothing about that settlement comes into evidence. You're to decide this case only on the evidence in the law. So obviously not a proper topic to be brought up in the jury room, but somebody might. I mean, kind of can't unring the bell, so to speak, but
Sure.
What would you say to that juror if they tried to bring it up?
I would say it's not pertinent to the case.
Okay, excellent. Do you think you can decide this case just on what you hear in the courtroom, put aside everything else?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you were given a long list of witnesses. Did you recognize anyone on that witness list?
No, I did not.
All right. We anticipate the trial will be 4 weeks long, starting on March 29th. Can you make that time frame work as a juror?
It's a difficult question.
Yeah.
Can I make that work?
Yeah, and
It's
I say
definitely
and I would,
inconvenient, but this isn't something about convenience, right? It is. It would be difficult work-wise.
okay.
I
Tell me
think-
about that.
I'm a department manager. I'm a licensed professional. I'm the only licensed professional of that category at my office.
Okay.
So for me to be gone for a month plus whatever jury deliberations take would have an impact on work.
Okay. Would it be mostly an impact on you financially, or just the burden being shifted to coworkers, or occasionally you having to do an hour or two of work at night or something like that?
Oh, I would be doing work at night if allowed.
Okay.
That's not. It's not a question.
Okay.
So no, it wouldn't be the financial. It would be the well, just the physical and mental toll of being on a jury for all day and then trying to get work
Right.
done at night.
Do you think it would be an overly burdensome proposition, or?
Potentially.
Okay. And I'll give you a personal example. Obviously, there are a lot of things that I have very supportive staff who can do a lot, but ultimately signing off on orders and making the final decision always has to come from me. So even when I'm on vacation, emergency things they have to find me and do, and I can pretty much take care of it and still be in a vacation frame of mind.
Great.
Do you think you could do that with your work and kind of pigeonhole that and do only what you have to do, and so we aren't falling asleep in the middle of
I wouldn't be falling asleep.
Okay.
With my profession, due to COVID, they have changed some of the licensure criteria.
Okay.
So quite a bit of what we used to have to do physically in person can happen online,
Okay.
and it can be submitted electronically.
All right.
So that eases the actual in-person aspect of my job.
Okay. I'm going to leave it go for now and turn over the attorneys. Any questions for me before I turn it over to Mr. Nelson?
No, I think there'll be some follow-up questions later if
Okay.
we'll see
Yeah.
where it goes.
I'm sure there will be follow-up. All right, with regard to jurors, number 78. Are you on a sidebar? Okay. We're just going to talk privately for a
Okay.
second.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
Doing well, and you?
I am well, thanks. Thank you for your patience and for being here today. I know these things sometimes take a little bit longer. What I normally do is I kind of ask some general questions and follow up on some questionnaire issues, but I want to make sure that I understand a couple of things before we waste anyone's time or see how much further we need to go.
Sure.
Your work, you indicated that you're the only licensed professional who does what you do in your office.
Correct.
And because you maintain that licensure, you have to sign off or approve things, or somehow your license is implicated, right?
Correct.
Or utilized perhaps by the other workers in your office.
Yes.
Okay. If you were on this jury, would that, and you were not available from 9 in the morning until 5 at night, would your business be able to continue?
Business would be able to continue, but there would be implications.
Okay. What would those implications be? Would they be projects get delayed? Would they be loss of revenue? What would the implications be?
Project being delayed, hopefully not loss of revenue, hopefully not loss of clients. I work in a profession specifically where we pride ourselves on not chasing projects, chase clients. So we have a lot of repeat clients that we do work for. And they return to us because we perform.
Sure.
We perform well. So we want to maintain that performance for those clients.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you to come a little closer to the microphone, and I'm, partially my ears are pretty bad. The possibility exists that, well, I should say we know for sure that at least for the process of deliberations, the jury would be sequestered, meaning in a hotel. And we don't know how long that could be. It could be a day, it could be 2, it could be a week. We have no idea. And there's the possibility that during the course of the trial, the jurors could be sequestered. How would that affect your ability to perform your job?
Sequestered, having no contact with the outside and not being able to continue my work would have a direct bearing on my firm.
Okay. And I mean, even if it were just for a couple of days, how would that present an undue hardship?
No, it would not.
Okay. But if it were longer than that, it could or would?
It could.
Okay. I know that you referenced a lot of these concerns in your questionnaire, and that was part of why you're weren't really sure if you wanted to be a part of it. Let me ask you this: would you be able to personally, pay your bills, pay your mortgage, and all of that?
Yes.
Okay. So the concern is really more professional in its nature.
Correct.
Okay. And then one other question that I had is, you at the top, when you were being questioned by the judge, you must have gone back and looked at your social media posts about this case.
Yes, I did.
And you read us or paraphrased us a couple of your social media posts pertaining to this case. Why did you go back and look at your social media about this case?
Because it dawned on me that I had made statements that are out there, and I did not disclose them, and that, in all honesty, I should disclose anything that's publicly out there that I've made statements that towards this case.
Okay. I only ask because, I mean, like, did anyone tell you, hey, these lawyers are going to look at your social media, anything of that nature? Okay. And were you made aware of any other jurors who had their social media, or potential jurors who had their social media accounts referenced?
No.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so I'm going to shift back now into how I would I just wanted to make sure that we could clear those couple issues up before we go into our normal routine.
All right.
So, first series of questions I'm going to ask you really is kind of just to get to know you and your thought process a little bit different, or a little bit better, I should say. And then I'm going to follow up with some of your opinions or questions and answers on the questionnaire. All right? So let's assume you and I were to meet in a much different circumstance. We're at a party or a professional event, and we strike up a conversation. What are a couple of things that I'm going to learn about you during that conversation?
Well, typically if I meet you at the party, we already have something in common. I try to figure out what we have in common to talk about. But since I don't know you, total stranger, I would discuss either my profession or the fact that I'm not a native Minnesotan, but I moved here many years ago and really enjoy it. I like the outdoors. I'm active in several other things that I've listed in my summary there. Mm-hmm. People that I would normally interact with would be either people from church, friends of the family, coworkers, or through, connections through my children.
Okay, great, thank you. Before you came, or before you received this packet of information, or this questionnaire, you had heard about the events involving Mr. Chauvin and Mr. Floyd, correct?
Yes.
And when you received notice that you were a prospective juror in this particular case, what was your just sort of initial reaction to that?
Are you effing kidding me? I was actually on a conference call when my wife handed me the packet, and It was a hot mic moment.
Wow.
And I had to step away, gather myself, and then get back on the call.
So it upset you?
No, it was shock.
Shock. Okay.
I've never been on jury duty before in my life. And this is my...
It's kind of jumping into the deep end of the ocean, huh?
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Did you have concerns about your personal safety, your family safety, COVID-19, any or all of the above?
Not so much COVID. I mean, we've gotten to the point, I think people are handling that fairly well. Personal safety, anonymity, yes, I have those concerns.
Oh, and what were those concerns?
Because this is such a high-profile case, no matter what the jury decision is, there will be groups that are upset. And through actions from May, through actions in January, it's hard to predict people's response to stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take much for things to turn violent.
Okay. Do you think a particular verdict would invoke a bigger response one way or the other?
Yes.
Would you register a vote that would be influenced by that?
No.
when you came to the government center this morning and you saw all the preparations and fortifications and things of that nature, did it make you feel more or less comfortable as it pertains to your personal safety?
More comfortable.
Okay. Obviously, within the context of being here in the government center, you feel comfortable?
Yes.
Okay. And when the court told you this morning that we're doing everything we can to protect your anonymity, how did that make you feel?
Indifferent. I mean, I assumed that you would try to protect our anonymity, so I didn't really register.
Sure. And you understand, however, that at some point, we don't know when or under what circumstances, but if you were to be a juror on this case, your identification would at some point become public.
Yes.
How does that make you feel?
Not well. In fact, I think on the first thing I marked up on my questionnaire was that juror's identity is kept confidential until after the trial. Whoa. What happens after the trial?
Right.
Yeah.
And so do you think that that would be a consideration of yours as you were deliberating in this case? Would you be concerned about when is my name going to be made public? And
yes, I would.
okay. Can you set it aside and judge the case on the evidence, or do you think that that would impact you?
I don't think it would impact me, but I'm not in the moment.
Okay, sure. Would it influence you to a particular verdict? Would it
No.
would it sway you towards one verdict or the other?
No.
The bottom line being is that can you foresee a circumstance wherein you would find Mr. Chauvin not guilty?
Yes.
So in your personal or professional life, can you think of a situation where you were called upon to resolve a conflict between two people?
Every day.
Okay. How do you approach the concept of conflict resolution?
Question. Mostly, the conflicts that I see have to do with interpretations of code. So I take a pragmatic approach, try to walk through the issues, walk through the letter of the law for code, and present the argument.
Okay. Now, is there a difference when you're a part of the conflict or directly involved in the conflict versus or being called in to two other people's conflict?
No.
Okay. Do you think that that's how you would approach the analysis of the evidence in this case?
Yes.
So you have some experience reviewing statutes or city codes or county codes or state codes and trying to make sense of them, right?
Yes.
You understand, I'm going to skip ahead here in a second, if you were a juror on this case, the judge is going to tell you what the law is.
Yes.
Right? Would you be able to apply that law even if you thought he was wrong or that it should be changed?
Yes.
Okay. Now, kind of going back to the conflict question, I think there's two layers or perhaps multiple layers of conflict involved in any litigation, right? There's obviously a very big conflict between the state of Minnesota and Mr. Chauvin. That's what you're ultimately being called upon to decide. It's one level. And then there may be conflict of testimony between two witnesses. And then there may be conflict amongst jurors in the jury room, right? How do you see those layers as being different, and how would you approach them differently if they are, or maybe they're not different?
Well, I would see that the conflict between Mr. Chauvin and the state of Minnesota should be championed by you lawyers, right? Conflict between jurors is a more delicate matter. I mean, if we are sequestered and we're 12 people plus whoever is there for additional jurors or backup jurors. You know, you lock up 12 people for however long it takes, and you need to come to a conclusion. Diplomacy is going to have to prevail, or no decision can be reached. So how do you do that? I mean, there's a lot of soft skills of people management that you go through. There's also standard, you know, go by the facts, go what we heard. Now, in the jury, the jury prep video that we saw, we can take notes, but it said basically you can take notes, but then you're also relying on your memory. On a trial that lasts a month, I would hope that a lot of people take notes because people's memories over a month long jury. So that I could see that being a concern.
Okay.
Plus, you have different opinions and different ways people see things differently. So you could have someone say something and two jurors take it a different way.
Right.
So to resolve that comes down to people skills and negotiation.
Okay. So, I mean, ultimately, right, I mean, I'll put it in its most basic, or what I perceive it to be the most basic level, which is there's a single piece of evidence, right? And it's this, in your opinion, is the crucial, critical, most telling piece of evidence, right? And there's some other group of people that are going, you know, juror number 78, you're crazy. That means nothing. It's irrelevant, right? Don't pay attention to that. But you think it's important, right? What do you do in that situation? I mean, all diplomacy is, you know, it's 3 days in, right?
I'm fairly stubborn,
Okay.
so I think I would stick to my guns.
Okay.
Still present it as what I believe to be critical. At a certain point, though, if 11 other jurors don't see it that way, or are adamant that it isn't as important, I think I would try to work through from their standpoint, why don't they think it's that important? What do they see as more important? Are they seeing another aspect of this case that I'm not? Are they not just seeing any aspects of the case? Are they, you know, I mean, you have a big enough pool of people to pull jurors from, you know, I hope you get some good ones.
Fair enough. So let me ask you again in this question, in terms of your professional life or your personal life, have you ever been 100% certain, only later to learn that you were wrong?
Yes.
Like perhaps you read a code, you're convinced, you do something specific in your interpretation, and later someone comes along and says, nope, you're wrong.
Yes.
Has that happened to you?
Yes, it is.
Okay. How do you deal with that?
Well, two instances that I can think of. The point for reconciliation or was already gone. You know, that structure was up.
Okay.
So then you store that as learned knowledge and move on. At that point, you can't change it.
Okay. Do you try to learn from that and apply it in the future, or
yeah.
do you just kind of blow it off?
Oh no, you take that as learned knowledge and apply it to the next applicable situation.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, I'm going to just follow up with some questions. Thank you very much for your answers on those. Let me just ask you a few questions about your questionnaire.
Okay.
All right. I noticed that, like, the first question, it appears like you typed in an answer and then wrote in the rest.
Yep.
Had you, like, scanned it in thinking you were going to answer? Or
No, I did that the other way.
Oh.
I started handwriting and then realized, I should just type this out.
All right, gotcha. I want to ask you, I think it is one of those things that needs to be clarified before we kind of go back and ask some specifics, is there's reference in the questionnaire to a video that you indicated you had seen 6 or more times.
Yes.
Can you just generally describe what was the video? Was it who took, not by name necessarily, but was it a bystander? Was it body cameras? Was it security cameras?
It was bystander video of the incident. I've not seen body cam footage or I don't remember if there was surveillance footage cut into the bystander for the full-length video. I've seen the full-length video once or twice.
Okay.
But I've seen cuts and pieces many times.
Okay. So I was going to ask you this. As far as this bystander video, this is the video that kind of went viral, became the news story, and then obviously in the couple of minute news stories, there may be segments that were shown, right?
Yes.
So you've seen those segments many, many times.
Yes.
But you also went and watched, or either through social media or through the internet, you watched a full-length, much longer version, right?
Yes. Yes.
And you think you watched that twice?
The full-length video, 2-3 times.
2-3 times, okay. And then seen the clips many other times on the news.
Correct.
Right, okay. Now, in terms of the first question that's asked in the questionnaire, basically just asks you to write what you remember, what happened, those types of things. And you had some specific recollections about the length of time, right?
Yes.
You had some specific recollections about which officers arrived at which time, who was first, who was second, who was third, who was fourth, etc.
Yes.
And then beyond that, you had some recollections about some other news that maybe Mr. Chauvin and Mr. Floyd had worked together previously.
Yes.
You had some information about potential complaints or letters of discipline that had been issued.
Yes.
And then obviously you referenced what happened in the aftermath of Mr. Floyd's death, right?
Yes.
And you live relatively close to the 3rd Precinct area, right?
Yes.
And ultimately, I think perhaps where your social, maybe you don't remember, but you do remember, because you wrote on May 29th, officers involved were arrested, and on May 30th, the governor called out the National Guard to quell the riots. Like, were those corresponding to your social media posts?
I don't remember.
Okay. So maybe you did or didn't look at it before you filled it up. I don't know. I'm not. But ultimately, I mean, based on what you see, what you lived, what you observed, you formed some opinions both as to Mr. Floyd and Mr. Chauvin, right?
Yes.
Okay. And both of those opinions you labeled as somewhat negative.
Yes.
Okay. With respect to Mr. Chauvin, you wrote, as a police officer, you are to protect and serve. This action was neither. Correct. It's a pretty conclusive statement, right?
Yes.
Would you agree you haven't seen everything in this case?
Yes.
Do you think that impacts your opinion?
The fact that I haven't seen all the evidence in the case, of course.
Right. Do you think that your opinion was perhaps influenced by what you saw in the media or what you lived as you lived near the 3rd Precinct?
Well, sure, that's the only experience I have of that is through living in that area and through media. That's the only experience I've had for the case. So that is how I've lived it and perceived it, yes.
Right. And likewise, with respect to Mr. Floyd, you wrote, it is reported that George was intoxicated and using counterfeit bills. These are not, and you wrote in quotes, good character or honorable actions, but these are not actions that should bring about your death.
Correct.
Okay. In your opinion, have you formed an opinion as to what or who is responsible for Mr. Floyd's death?
I guess at my core, I do have issues with a police officer arriving on scene when a person is already handcuffed. There being a police action resulting in a person dying. Yes.
Okay. So, have you formed a specific opinion that Mr. Chauvin is responsible for the death of George Floyd?
Responsible?
Or caused his death?
Caused his death, yes.
Can you set that opinion aside honestly, listen to the evidence in this case, and decide the case based on the evidence as opposed to your opinion?
Yes.
You were asked a question whether you had talked to your friends, family, coworkers, or discussed it online or on social media. You shared with us, and I appreciate your social media posts, but you ultimately said you had talked to your friends and family member, and you wrote, "George Floyd did not deserve to die. There are many, many ways this could and should have been handled differently."
Yes.
Again, you are entitled to, and I've told many jurors this, right? You are entitled to your opinions. You are entitled to them as much as I am entitled to mine, right? Have you formed, however, an opinion that what you observed was contrary to what you understand to be proper police procedure?
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure. Have you formed an opinion that Officer Chauvin and or the others violated some police procedure and that's what caused Mr. Floyd's death?
From the information that I had at the time, yes, I believe that there was improper police procedure.
Okay. And again, I've said this to many too. I don't know what's in your heart. I don't know what's in your head. I have to take your words at face value.
Sure.
You can appreciate that, right?
Yes.
And you understand why we would be so desirous of having an impartial juror.
It's critical to what we do.
It's critical to both sides, right?
Right. It's critical to the whole system.
And our law presumes Mr. Chauvin innocent.
Yes.
And you have an opinion that Mr. Chauvin caused George Floyd's death.
Yes.
You understand that as a defendant in this country, we don't have to, Mr. Chauvin does not have to introduce a piece of evidence. He does not have to ask a question. He does not have to testify, right?
Yes.
And you, as a juror, are supposed to start at kind of ground zero.
Mm-hmm.
That being Mr. Chauvin is presumed innocent.
Yes.
Right? I shouldn't have to persuade you to get past your opinion to get back to that presumption of innocence. That's where you need to start. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
Can you do that? Can you start there?
I would like to think I could, but that's a really difficult question. And I know that's the meat of why we're here, right?
Absolutely, that's the meat of why we're here. And I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You finish your thought.
Yeah, no, it's, I don't know if I could. From a starting point, yes.
You can't presume him innocent.
It would be difficult for me, from what I have seen, to erase everything and start from a starting point of thinking of him as purely innocent.
Well, lots of jurors come in and say they can try, right?
Right.
Will you be able to do it? And you know yourself.
Like I said, I'm a very stubborn person. I typically don't waffle much. I'm confident in what I think and what I believe. So it would be very difficult for me to start at ground zero from presuming pure innocence. Yes.
Your Honor, would the court like to inquire further?
Yeah, sir, I'm just going to ask you a couple questions.
How many times did you watch the whole video?
2 or 3.
Okay, and just when it came on the news, or did you actually seek out a copy
I
to?
sought out a copy to watch it.
Okay, and so you probably saw bits and pieces, but also the full versions. How many times total?
The full version 2 or 3 times,
Okay.
and bits and pieces many times.
And it appears, people come in, we do say you have to put aside your opinions, but people come in and it's rarely a case of intelligence or anything other factors. It's just maybe they've been exposed to so much that it entrenches their opinions so much that they can't presume the defendant innocent. Do you think you fall into that category?
I think I do.
The alternative is, I did see a lot, but you know what? I can put it all aside. Absolutely, I can tell you. Not just that I'll try it, but I know I can. Which way do you fall? And like I say, it's not a matter of personality, defect, or intelligence. It's just, it is what it is, and maybe if someone has seen too much that they can't put it aside, we understand. But we also understand if you can say, I can put it aside.
Yeah, I think it would be very difficult to put all of that aside and start at ground zero as presumed innocent. I think that through the course of the trial, looking at the evidence, I think I would always start out with a bias.
Okay. I really appreciate your candor and your honesty on this. I'm going to release you from the panel.
Okay.
We appreciate you taking all the time for the questionnaire and to be here today. You can go to the deputy, they'll take some paperwork from you, and you're released from jury service, so don't worry about being put on another case.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Juror 79, is that correct? All right, Juror 79 is next. Is this, how many we got for morning? Is 79 and?
So we have 5 more after this one.
But when's the break for the group?
After the next one after this, we'll need to break for the orientation.
Yeah, make sure, 'cause I forget. Just call on. Good morning, come on up. Or afternoon. Yeah, a chair right there. All right. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Couple of things before I turn the questions over to the attorneys. First of all, I'm going to swear you in because all your answers have to be under oath. So if you could raise your right hand. You swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror.
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. First of all, thank you for filling out the questionnaire and getting back to us. It gives us a lot of good information to start from. Is everything on that questionnaire true?
You have to do based on my knowledge is true.
Okay. And yeah, that was my fault. I forgot to give you the idea or some of the instructions here.
Okay.
We have plexiglass in front of us. We have plexiglass between us. And the attorneys will have their own plexiglass. So there's quite a bit of protection here. I'm going to continue to wear my mask, even though I've had one of the vaccine shots. But that will allow you, if you wish, either for comfort or to be heard more clearly, to take off your mask.
Okay. I'll do
And in either case, and if you feel like you need to put it on again, totally your call. But if you could, in either case, mask on or off, pull a little bit closer to the microphone.
All right.
There you go. That should be just fine.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I can hear me. I can hear myself.
All right. Everything on your questionnaire is true, is that right?
Yes, it's true.
All right. Are there any changes or additions that you can think of right now for that questionnaire?
Not right now.
All right, because we recognize that you filled this out a couple of months ago.
All right.
And in the intervening months, maybe on reflection, you remembered some new facts, or you realized something you put in there was not accurate, or your opinions evolved even. And right now, it doesn't sound like you have anything to volunteer about that.
No, nothing to volunteer right now.
Okay. The point I'm trying to make is that you should feel comfortable saying something that is different from what's in the questionnaire. Okay? Just with the passage of time, don't worry about it being different. It happens very often.
Okay.
And so I want you to feel comfortable doing that.
All right.
And it's going to come up actually more when the attorneys ask you questions, because they tend to focus on certain questions. In fact, they will often read the question and your answer kind of to reflect or to refresh your memory as to what you actually said.
Okay.
It's not out of disrespect, it's more just to refresh your memory, because it's been a while.
Okay.
Okay, part of that questionnaire provided that you were not supposed to read any news articles and you're to avoid media. But we also, again, understand it's been several months. Has any information about this case or related cases, like related civil cases or pretrial matters or the attorneys' parties, anything that you inadvertently were exposed to that gave you more information about the case?
No, I
Okay.
don't think so. No.
All right. For example, there's been media coverage about the trial itself lately, and about actually extensive media coverage about a related case. Anything about that you recall seeing just within the last couple of weeks, maybe?
What I can say, I hear about a settlement of 27 million.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the really only thing that I'm aware of as a change, or as something new to the case.
Okay. And that was a civil case, as far as you know, or did you read much of the details?
No, I don't know what it was about, like civil or criminal, I don't know.
Okay. Since it's not related to this case, or not part of this case, can you put aside anything you heard about or saw in regards to that?
No.
Okay. You can put it aside or cannot put it aside?
I'll put it aside,
Okay.
It will not influence my judgment. I think no.
Okay. Well, right now, let me ask this basic question. Do you feel, when you filled out the questionnaire,
Yes.
that you could be a fair and impartial juror in this case involving Mr. Chauvin?
Yes, I did.
When you heard about this civil settlement, which again is not really relevant to this case, it's
Okay.
different stuff,
Right.
did that move you in any way in a direction of being partial to one side or the other?
No.
Do you think it had any effect on you?
I've still the same. No, it does not affect me.
Okay, great. Any other details of any other news in the last few weeks or months that you can recall that related to this case in some way, even indirectly?
No.
Okay, great. Now for an easier question. Did you recognize any witnesses on the witness list?
No, nobody.
All right, and the trial is going to be we figure about 4 weeks. As you've already seen, we have some delays sometimes, so we can't be for certain. Could you make the 4 weeks on jury duty work?
Yes, if I'm chosen, yes, I can do that.
Okay, your personal, professional life, you could make it work?
Yes, my job actually pay for jury duty, so
Okay,
they will let me go.
so there's no financial hardship?
No.
Okay, excellent. Bottom line, can you put aside anything you've seen or heard outside the courtroom and decide this case just on the facts, the evidence you hear in the courtroom, and the law that I give you?
Yes, I do.
All right. Thank you, sir. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nelson. With regard to juror number 79, Mr. Nelson, you may inquire.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
All right, you. How about you?
I'm good, thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your patience here this morning. I know it's gotten to be a long day. Sometimes these things get delayed a little bit, okay?
Okay.
I'm gonna just grab my water. Hold on.
All right.
All right, so what I'd like to do, sir, is ask you a kind of a series of general questions and then ask you some follow-up questions on some of the answers you provided on the questionnaire. Would that be okay with you?
Okay, it's okay.
All right. So let's assume that you and I met in a different circumstance, a party, a social event, at a store. We just strike up a conversation, whatever it is. What are a couple of things that I'm going to learn about you in that conversation?
I think I'll be honest with you, and then, I mean, I don't know you, but I will not trust you right away. So those two things, I'll be honest, but I will not trust you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a little suspicious of me right now?
Not really. You know.
No. Fair enough. When you had heard about the incident involving Mr. Chauvin and Mr. Floyd prior to learning you were a potential juror, is that fair to say?
Right.
When you learned that you were a potential juror on this case, what was your first reaction?
I was surprised. Actually, my wife is my wife is the one that opened the envelope and showed me.
Okay.
So we were both surprised that I was chosen. So, yeah, it was just a surprise to me, nothing else.
Okay. Did you have any concerns about your personal safety, your physical safety, your family safety, or COVID, or anything of that nature?
Safety-wise, I was not so concerned because it's only me. The letter said don't tell anybody. So security-wise, I don't know who else knows, so I was not concerned. COVID-wise, I didn't think about COVID, so
Okay.
yeah.
When you came down to the government center this morning and you saw, all of the fences and the army and all of that stuff, how did that make you feel?
I was not expecting them. Actually, I was lost a little bit going around the building, and then when I saw the door and I asked a question, and they opened the door to me, I mean, the first person that came to me was the policeman or the army, so I was like shocked. Yeah, so that was I was not expecting to see police or the army in here.
Okay. Did it concern you or worry you?
No, I think it's for my safety at that time, so.
Okay. So it made you feel maybe a little safer?
Right.
Okay. In terms of when the judge gave the group the instructions this morning that we're trying to protect your anonymity or keep your identity away from the public at this point, how did that make you feel?
I was reassured that I'm safe, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
That way.
At some point, your name may be released publicly. Do you understand that?
Okay.
I mean, I'm just telling you. We don't know when or under what circumstances, but does that concern you at all if your name were to be known to the public?
No.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure.
Okay.
All right. I know that you work in in a management capacity, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have people under me, yes.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question in terms of, your professional life or even in your personal life. Can you think of a time where you were asked to resolve a dispute between two people?
Yes.
Okay. When you are asked to resolve a dispute between two people, how do you approach that responsibility?
So usually you have to listen to both sides involved in the dispute, and you have to follow the company policy.
Okay.
That's how you can, resolve the problem. So, yeah, you have to bring up the company policy and still listen to the both sides, and then that's where you make a decision.
Okay. It's kind of similar to being a juror, is you're going to hear about some disputes, and then you have to read the law, and you have to decide how to vote, right?
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to draw that analogy.
Yeah, I think so.
You understand that your role here as a juror is to essentially resolve disputes.
Yes, that's what I mean.
There's a big dispute between the state of Minnesota and Mr. Chauvin. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
And there may be disputes in the jury room between you and other jurors, or between just other jurors.
Yes.
So thinking about it in the context of being in the jury room, right? You're deliberating with these other people. How do you approach, you've got two groups of jurors, right? And somebody says X, and the other group says Y. I talk with my hands. The other group says Y. How do you resolve the dispute between those two sides?
We have to listen to each other if you are in that room, right? Which is like both sides in the rooms. And we will have the law, right? So we go by what the law say. I think that's the way to go. That's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do you think it changes if you're in a dispute with someone else, versus being an observer of a dispute? Like if you're the person that says, this is the most important thing we need to focus on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus someone else saying that. How do you respond to that? If you think you're right and everybody else is wrong.
I mean, still, we still have to follow the law. If the law say I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. So
Okay.
that's what I'm saying.
So let me take an example. A certain piece of evidence is admitted into this trial, right?
Right.
And, I'm going to make something up. Let's say it's a blood stain, right? And you think that the blood stain is the most important piece of evidence that answers how to resolve the law. Does that make sense? That piece of evidence holds the answer so you can apply the law. But everybody else goes, no, we don't need to look at the blood stain, we need to look at the fingerprint. So you have a dispute about the evidence and how that affects the law. So are you going to just agree with everybody else simply because you want to get it over with and make a decision? Or are you going to fight and say, no, we really need to look at this blood stain here?
In that situation, okay, is that right?
That's
Okay.
good.
Yeah, in that situation, I think we can ask for advice, right? Are we allowed to ask for advice? Because when I'm comparing with like the first case you talk about, right? The first example you gave me, when the policy is not clear or when we cannot resolve it, we go to the upper management. We can be the HR or the manager. So we can ask questions from there, and then they will let you know, yeah, this is what you can do.
Right.
So my question will be, if you can ask question, then we'll ask more questions.
Okay. Well, let's assume you can't.
Mr. Nelson, let me clarify something.
Sure.
As I told you when you first came in, you are the sole judges of the facts. I'm the judge of the law, and so I can clarify the law, but I
Okay.
cannot suggest how you should decide facts. Does that give you a better idea on the division of labor here?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Mr. Nelson, I'm sorry.
All right.
I was just going to say, let's assume you can't ask questions,
Right.
right? You and 11 other people have to decide, do we pay attention to this or do we pay attention to that?
Right.
Right? So, my question is, are you going to just agree with everybody because you just want to get it over with?
No. If I think I'm right and I'm following the right thing, then I'll stand for that. I'm not going to go with what they say.
Sorry, someone's hammering upstairs, it sounds like. Okay, you're not, can you repeat that, sir?
So if I think that I'm right, then I'm not going to follow anybody else.
Okay.
If I'm thinking they are wrong. So
Sure.
I'm not going their way.
Are you willing to hear them out?
I will, for sure, 100%.
Would you insist that they hear you?
Yes, I'll try to convince them that I'm right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what if the judge gives you a list of the law? You know, that's what will happen, is he'll tell you, here's the law that you have to apply in this case. Because he decides what the law is, you decide what the facts are.
Correct.
Now, what if you think the judge is wrong, or you think the law should be different? You look at it and you go, that can't possibly be the law. What do you do then?
I mean, that's what the judge gave me, that it's a law, so it's a law. I have to follow it.
You can follow the law regardless of whether you think it's wrong or should be changed.
Yes, I'll follow it.
Okay, great. I'm going to follow up with a few questions on your questionnaire, okay, sir?
Okay.
We'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. I like to kind of ask a question about this video that's referenced in this questionnaire. There's questions about a video.
Yeah.
Now, there's several videos that have been made public. There's a bystander video. A person took a video on their cell phone, and that video went, viral on the internet, became a news story. There were some body cameras that were released. There were some security footage from nearby stores. Which of those videos do you remember watching?
I would say I did not watch the whole video, but there was one on Facebook. I watched part of it, not the whole thing, but yeah, I watched part of it.
So that's the bystander video, the person that was standing and watching Mr. Floyd get arrested?
I think that's the one, yeah.
Okay. And I think you said you watched it 2 or 3 times?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Did you also see little snippets or clips on like the news or TV?
Yes, it was everywhere, so yeah.
Okay. So I think we're talking about the same video. So you were asked to write down what you remember or what you had heard, and you wrote, I remember I saw in the news and on social media one of the officers kneeling on George's neck. The other officers were looking on and also trying to maintain order as people started gathering at the scene. Do you remember writing that?
Right.
And then you say, at one time they had to call the ambulance on the scene. They took George to the hospital when he died. I also remember while on the ground, George was shouting or crying that he can't breathe.
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of watching on the news and or talking to your friends, that's the sum of what you had kind of heard about the case or seen, right?
Yes, I would say.
You were asked a question that, based on what you've seen, read, or heard, had you formed an impression of the defendant, so an opinion of the defendant.
Yes.
And you wrote that you had a neutral opinion of the defendant, right?
Yeah.
And you wrote, and when asked why, you said, because so far I have not heard anything or statements from them or him.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So one of the I guess the questions that I have for you is, under our system of law, where the judge just told you this morning, is the defendant does not have to testify.
Okay.
Mr. Chauvin does not have to introduce evidence. He does not have to ask a question of any witness. He does not have to testify. Okay. Would it be necessary for you to hear from him?
I think it will help if you can hear from him, right? But if the law says he's not obliged to say anything, then it is what it is, right?
Yeah, and could you make a decision about this case if you never heard anything from him?
Yes, I will follow the law at that time, yeah.
Okay. You were asked for your impression of Mr. Floyd as well, and you said you had a somewhat positive impression of Mr. Floyd, and you wrote, because the media talked a lot about him in a positive manner, and there have been a lot of demonstrations supporting him.
Yes.
Since filling out this questionnaire, have you heard anything else about Mr. Floyd, or do you still retain that view of him?
I did not hear anything else apart from what I just said this morning to the
Okay.
judge, not really anything new.
And you understand Mr. Floyd's not on trial here, Mr. Chauvin is.
Yes.
So you formed an opinion that was neutral. I mean, from what you've seen and heard and talked about with your friends, can you put that all to the side and start presuming Mr. Chauvin innocent of these charges?
Yes. I never say he was guilty, you know. I just say I was neutral. So, yes.
Okay. You were asked if you had talked to your friends, family members, coworkers, or discussed this case online on social media, and you wrote yes, but you also wrote, I don't like expressing my opinions to people. So did you just talk to like your wife or family members?
Yes. Like at work, people bring it up and then I just brush it out. I don't talk about it, you know. And if I say yes at one time, it's just like with family and
Okay.
with my son.
Okay. So have you today formed any opinion about who or what is responsible for the death of George Floyd?
No.
Okay. You were asked about whether you believe your community had been negatively or positively affected by any of the protests. And you wrote that you live in a suburb and you personally did not see any impact in your community. You understand that after Mr. Floyd died, there were lots of protests and then there were riots. Do you think that those negatively or positively impacted the Twin Cities community as a whole?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Like I say, I don't come to this area a lot, so yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Do you recognize there's a difference between a protest and a riot?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain to me what you see as the difference between a protest and a riot?
I would say a protest is when you are expressing your disagreement with a situation or with anything, or even an opinion and everything, right? And then you can just talk about it, act, and demonstrate, right? That's a protest for me. And a riot to be when you start like breaking stuff, going to the store, taking stuff out, call it looting, or all those. I think at that time that was a riot.
Okay.
That would be different for me.
Right. Okay. Do you see any positive changes or have any positive opinion of the protests that were, or negative, I should say, positive or negative opinion of the protests that occurred after Mr. Floyd's death?
You can protest, right, without, I mean, there are laws that guide everything. You can protest without the right thing. So I cannot say that I have a positive opinion about the negative demonstration, which is the riot. So I don't have any.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. And you would definitely, you said you were asked a question, no matter what you have heard or seen about this case, and no matter what opinions you might have formed, can you put all of that aside and decide this case only on the evidence you would receive in court, follow the law, and decide the case in a fair and impartial manner? And you wrote, I would definitely say yes.
Yes, it's a yes, yeah.
Okay, good. You were asked about some experiences with police contacts, and you had your home burglarized at one point.
Yes.
And you felt that the police responded and handled that situation appropriately.
Yes.
Do you know, or were you ever made aware, did they catch the person who broke into your house?
No, they never did.
Okay. Do you think that the police somehow failed you in that regard? In catching the person?
He ran away, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you harbor any resentment towards police officers because they didn't catch the person who broke into your house?
No.
Okay,
No.
fair enough. You were asked, I'm going to just ask you about a couple. There were a series of statements, and I'm showing you this, I don't know if you can see it. Series of statements, and you were asked to kind of rank them from strongly agree to strongly disagree.
Yeah.
And I just have a couple of questions about some of your answers.
Okay.
Right? You were asked, discrimination is not as bad as the media makes it out to be, and you had no opinion about that statement,
Yeah.
right? Why no opinion?
Can I say that's my opinion?
I suppose that's fair.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on everybody, you know. For me, like I say, I don't have any opinion because,
Okay.
yeah.
You were asked, however, or the statement reads, blacks and other minorities do not receive equal treatment as whites in the criminal justice system, and you somewhat agreed with that.
Okay.
Like, do you have personal experience? Do you have friends who've experienced? Do you read studies? Like, why would you have more of an opinion of that than how the media presents discrimination?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
I know what you said, but I don't get the question.
The statement reads, blacks and other minorities do not receive equal treatment as whites in the criminal justice system. And you somewhat agreed with that.
Yeah.
And I'm just asking, why would you somewhat agree with that where you have no opinion as to how the media presents that issue?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
All right. So, I did not have any study, but like we said, the way the media presented, and when you read some stuff, you can see that sometimes they make mistake and then they correct it later. Okay, so most of them tend to be black people, so that's why I would say somehow or somewhat agree with that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But you also indicated that police in my community make me feel safe, excuse me, and you strongly agreed with that.
Yes.
You were asked a couple of questions about your perspective on Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote that both of those you had a somewhat favorable opinion of. And with respect to Black Lives Matter, you wrote, I took this position because every life should matter and black people think their lives are not valued. Can you explain that a little bit more? Like, why do you?
I mean, every life matters, right? I say that, yeah. But again, the black people, that's what they think.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that's what it is, right? But that's what they think. That's what I'm saying. That, yeah.
And so because they feel that way, it's important, right? It's important to respect that.
Yeah, it should be important.
And even if it's right or wrong, you're saying it's, I'm not trying to put words in your
Right.
mouth, right?
But it's not if it's right or wrong, right? But if it's right, we have to respect that.
And again, with respect to Blue Lives Matter, do you understand that to be a reference to police officers?
Yes.
Okay. You wrote, again, every life should matter and not be disrespected. We all, at the end, have family to go back to at the end of each day or at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think I'm nearing the end, sir. You were asked ultimately if you wanted to serve as a juror in this case, and you checked the box not sure. And then you wrote why, or when you were asked why, you wrote, if I qualify, I will serve. It is a duty I have to fulfill according to the law, right?
Yeah.
So my question for you is, why would you not be sure about whether you wanted to be a juror in this case?
Okay, this is my first time doing this, and I'm not from America originally. So that's why I say if I qualify. That's the if. I'm not sure about it. So that's what it is. It's not that I'm not sure if I can serve or if I will do it. I'm not sure if I can qualify to do it.
Are you a citizen of the United States?
Yes, I am.
Do you live in Hennepin County?
Yes, I do.
Are you over the age of 18?
Yes, I am.
Have you ever been convicted of a felony offense?
No.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Sure. Those are the bases. That's all you put.
Okay, thank you.
Cause?
It depends, passes for cause. Mr. Slisher.
Thank you, Your Honor. Oh, sure. All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
And I understand that you've lived in the general Twin Cities area for about 19, 20 years, is that right?
Yes. I mean,
Have you had any interactions with Minneapolis police?
no Minneapolis, but where I live, yes.
And that was the issue that you discussed before with,
Right.
with your home, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. During the first part, when you were talking about what you learned about the case from the media, you wrote that you remember that while on the ground, George was shouting or crying that he can't breathe. Do you recall writing that?
Yes, I do.
Do you have any opinion as to whether or not someone would be able to say they couldn't breathe if they actually couldn't?
No, if you cannot breathe, you can say you cannot breathe. Yeah.
So
You can-
you think someone could say that and be sincere?
Yes.
Okay. You indicated on the questionnaire that you strongly disagree with the notion of defunding the police. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you please explain why you strongly disagree with that?
For me, the police does a lot, right? I mean, like I say, when somebody broke into my house, I called the police and they came. I mean, if they were defunded, how can they come and help me?
And the police have been helpful to you. You generally trust the police.
Yeah, I would trust the police.
I notice you have a family, and one member of your family maybe getting near the age of being able to drive, right?
Yes.
Have you gone through driver's ed with this family member?
No, he's getting there, but not quite by next year.
He'll be coming up on that.
Yes.
So you're going to have to teach this family member how to drive.
Yes.
When you teach your family member how to drive, you show them the rules of the road, in your neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
What will you tell your family member to do if he gets pulled over by the police?
But you stop and you answer the questions. If they ask questions, you answer their question.
Would you tell your family member to take any other particular precautions?
precaution like I don't know. When the police stop you, I mean you stop, right?
And that's what you would tell your family.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stop and then.
Some people might say that someone who doesn't cooperate with the police, if something happens to them, they have only themselves to blame. What do you think of that statement?
Cooperation is good, right? We help everybody. But if something happens, we still have to look for the fight. Yeah. If you did not cooperate and something happened, we still have to deal with the fight. What happened? Was the law say? Can we do this? Do we have not do that? So yeah.
So it sounds like you would say that a person should cooperate with the police.
That's my opinion. Yes.
But if they don't and something happens to them,
Yes.
do you believe the police should still have to follow the law and the proper procedure?
Right. That's what I was saying. Yes.
Do you know anyone who struggles with a drug addiction?
No.
Do you know anyone who uses illegal drugs
No.
or alcohol, for that matter?
No.
No. I take it you don't use alcohol yourself?
I mean, I drink by like
Socially?
like a social drinking at home or yeah.
Have you heard anything, or if you were to find out that someone involved in this case had been using drugs,
Okay.
what would you think of that person, just as a general proposition? Would you have a positive view of them, negative view of them, or a neutral view of them?
I would say neutral. I would be neutral because yeah.
Someone might say that if someone is taking illegal drugs and they're harmed, they have only themselves to blame for that too. What do you think of that statement?
I would disagree with that. I mean, if I say disagree, meaning like you are on drug, then something happened to you, right? It's a tough one, but I think I'll be neutral and I will not blame anybody first. I mean, still we just still have to go with the fact, you know.
Do you believe, as you sit here, that you're satisfied with kind of the level of oversight that the police department has over individual officers? Do you think that there's an appropriate level of oversight?
I don't know the oversight, so I cannot say it's appropriate because I don't know how it goes. So I cannot form an opinion on something I don't really know about.
Well, can you tell me what you think an appropriate level of oversight of the police officers should be?
So when you say oversight, can you explain it a little more
Yes.
for me, please?
So, for example, police officers, they have to make decisions when they're out doing their job, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they have to make decisions that are very fast in a changing situation. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And do you think that it is fair then for an officer's discretion to be questioned when they're out there trying to enforce the law and making decisions in a rapidly changing situation?
Yes, that would be good if they can, I would say, yeah, take a step back and before they act, right? That would be good. But still, we still have to deal with the fact in each situation.
And do you think it's appropriate for someone who hasn't had police training to be the person in the position of, judging what the police officer did. So, for example, if you're seated as a jury, you would be evaluating whether a police officer's actions were reasonable or unreasonable under the circumstances.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's fair for you and other jurors to sit in judgment over a police officer?
I would say it's another pair of eyes, a new mind, just looking at the action. So, yeah, I mean, I hope that person should be fair and see the fact and, yeah, better. So that's what I think.
One moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. I have no further questions, and I'll pass for cause.
All right, sir, you will be on our jury. And so what we're going to do is we're going to release you until March 29th. Go about your business. You don't have to report in. On March 29th at 9 a.m. we'll actually start the trial with all the other jurors present. And what the deputy's going to do is take some paperwork from you as you leave. Make sure that a couple things, that we have your current contact information to answer any phone calls you get. In case there's a delay and we have to change the date, we don't want you to come down here unnecessarily. There might also be some instructions regarding parking and that type of thing. So that's why we need to contact you. The other thing is, try and avoid all news media about this case. In fact, given the amount of news coverage there is, if you could avoid the news for a while, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Including what's maybe in your Facebook page, that'd be wonderful.
Cool.
All right, any questions for me?
No.
Okay, you can go with the deputy, and thank you again for taking the time to answer our questions.
Thank you, sir.
We're gonna break. We're gonna break. Oh, is she next? Is she next?
She's next.
Okay.
And then we have the next, the afternoon group.
Okay, let's do that. All right, that was juror number, new juror number 8. We're going to take the next juror because this is the one we've had a feeling might be quick.
That was juror number 79.
Correct, that was juror number 79 that we just accepted. And counsel, any objection to going to no audio fairly quickly?
No objection. No objection.
Okay, ma'am, come on up, have a seat. You can have a seat, yes. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to swear you in because all your answers have to be under oath. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, under penalty of perjury, that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror?
I do.
All right. A couple things before we get started. You filled out a questionnaire, and there's a lot of good information on that. In fact, I'm probably going to dive into some of the more sensitive areas, and so I'd prefer that we not be broadcasting those parts. You probably know what I'm talking about on your questionnaire. I'd like to go off audio, which means court reporter will still be taking down what you have to say, and the people in the room can hear what you're saying, but it won't be broadcast outside this courtroom. Would that be okay with you?
Yes.
All right. At this point, I'm going to order that based on the rules that this is extremely sensitive a matter, and thus the audio is to be cut at this time. We could actually go back on audio just to make a record. That was juror number 83. We had a short conversation off the not off the record, but off audio based on her answers, and she confirmed that, and the court excused her for cause. I will note she was even wiping a tear as she left. So this is obviously traumatic for her. So with that, I think we're going to take a break. We've been going at it for over an hour and a half. Let's come back at 10 after.
Do we still have jurors?
Yes.
Oh, I thought we were sending the afternoon panel home.
Nope. We still have jurors. All right. Thank you, everyone. Ready for the next group? This is a group advisory, so.
Yes, we're
All right.
Yep.
Great. I think. Oh, yeah, I got it. I got it. No, I got it. '83 is so quick that I got to know it. That's all. All right, come on in and have a seat anywhere. You can spread out if you wish and have a seat. Thank you. Please be seated. Well, first of all, can you all hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear. Excellent. Okay. Because we do have hearing assistance devices if they're necessary. Well, first of all, my name is Pete Cahill, and I'm one of the judges of the district court, and you have been summoned as potential jurors in this case, which is the state of Minnesota versus Derek Chauvin, which is a criminal case related to the death of George Floyd on May 25th, 2020. A person charged with a crime has a right to a fair trial before an impartial judge and an impartial jury. In order to make sure the jurors who are selected are impartial, the law provides that the court and the attorneys for the parties may ask questions to all prospective jurors, which must be answered under oath. First of all, thank you for filling out and returning the questionnaire that was mailed to you. Your contribution to the serious and important matter at hand is best served by continuing to provide full and complete and honest answers to the questions that you'll be asked today. Those topics will follow up on issues from the questionnaire and possibly other topics. After the questioning is over, the attorneys will have the right to excuse some of you from service on this jury, and I may excuse others of you for what is called cause. In either case, it does not mean that you are not a fair person, and you should not take offense in being excused. I also ask that you not take any offense at any question you might be asked. We must pry, to some extent, in order to explore some opinions you might hold or experiences that you've had that might affect your ability to serve in this case. The defendant, Mr. Chauvin, has been charged with murder in the second degree and manslaughter in the second degree. Now, in the normal course of a trial, charges might be added to or subtracted from these charges, but those are the charges as it stands today. To the charges, the defendant has entered a plea of not guilty, which is a denial of each and every material allegation in the charges. I'm now going to have the participants introduce themselves and ask you later if you have any acquaintance or friendship or professional relationship with anybody in the courtroom. beginning with the state.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steve Slisher, represent the state of Minnesota.
Hello, my name is Christina Marinakis, and I'm assistant to the prosecution.
Hello, everyone. My name is Keith Ellison, and I represent the state of Minnesota.
Good afternoon, Erin Eldridge for the state of Minnesota.
And Mr. Nelson, if you'd introduce your client and yourself.
Good afternoon, ladies and ladies. My name is Eric Nelson, along with my colleague Amy Voss. We represent the defendant, Derek Chauvin.
Right, thank you. Anybody recognize anyone who has introduced themselves? And raise your hand if the answer is yes. Anyone know anybody else from the Minnesota Attorney General's office, including some attorneys who might be appearing in this case but are not in the courtroom today, including Assistant Attorney General Matthew Frank, Jerry Blackwell, or anybody else who works at the Minnesota Attorney General's office? Okay, no hands. Anybody who you might know from Mr. Nelson's law firm or had any dealings with his law firm? Okay. You have been given a copy of a list of potential witnesses. I would ask you to review it before you're questioned individually, because we're going to ask you if you know anyone on that list. And as kind of a final cleanup question, anybody have a relationship, personal acquaintance, or professional relationship with anybody in the courtroom here? No hands. All right. Now, one of the things the attorneys may not do in jury selection is to instruct you on the law, but I do want you to be aware of some of the basic concepts that apply in all criminal cases, so that you may keep them in mind as you answer the court's and the attorney's questions. So I will instruct you as follows. First, the charges against the defendant are not evidence, and they create no inference of guilt. No member of the jury should in any way permit himself or herself to be prejudiced against the defendant because a charge has been made against him or because he has been placed on trial. The defendant is presumed innocent of the charges made against him. And in order for you to find the defendant guilty, the state must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant does not have to prove his innocence. The presumption of innocence remains with the defendant throughout the trial unless and until he has been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt according to the law and the evidence admitted at trial. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is such proof as ordinarily prudent men and women would act upon in their most important affairs. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based upon reason and common sense. It does not mean a fanciful or capricious doubt, nor does it mean beyond all possibility of doubt. If you serve on this jury, you and your fellow jurors will be the sole judges of whether a witness is to be believed and of the weight to be given a witness's testimony. Now, there are no hard and fast rules to guide you in this respect, but in determining believability and weight of testimony, jurors may take into consideration the witness's interest or lack of interest in the outcome of the case, their relationship to the parties, their ability and opportunity to know, remember, and relate the facts, their manner, age and experience, frankness and sincerity, or the lack thereof, the reasonableness or the unreasonableness of their testimony in light of all the other evidence in the case, and any other factors that bear on believability and weight. If on this jury, you should rely on the last analysis upon your own experience, good judgment, and common sense. Now, there are certain things you should not do during jury selection. You are not investigators. So you're not to go out to do any looking. You're not to ask people about this matter. You are not to use the internet to look for information about this case or about the law. And in fact, you should avoid media coverage of this case, even if it's on a social media platform. Above all, you must not talk to anyone who is involved, either the lawyers, parties, or witnesses, or spectators. Do not be offended if any of those persons do not talk to you. They know it would be improper to contact you except through the normal jury selection process. Generally, they will confine themselves to a brief greeting. Now, during the selection process, your family and friends will be curious as to what you are doing. You may tell them you are on a panel of potential jurors in a criminal case, and that is all you should tell them. Since that is all you should tell family and friends, that is all you should tell the general public. So, during these proceedings, please refrain from using Facebook, Twitter, or other social media to announce that you are a potential juror or to comment on this trial. You may access those social media tools with caution, but please do not publish any information about the case or your thoughts about the case. You do not have to stay away from people who refuse to speak to them, but do not talk about the case and do not talk at all to anyone involved. Now, because of the nature of the charges, this case is receiving media coverage. Do not read about this case in the newspapers or online or in social media, and do not listen to news about it on radio or television. In fact, if you can avoid the news completely, that would be the easiest way. This trial, including jury selection, is being televised, but no video of you or any juror will be taken at any time, now or during trial if you are selected. Also, your name will not be used in the courtroom. To protect your privacy, you'll only be referred to by your random number. The audio of anything you say will be broadcast, unless we need to discuss something that is deeply personal, extremely sensitive, or embarrassing, or would tend to identify you specifically. In that case, I will order that the audio not be broadcast. You will still have to answer questions on the record, but the audio being available only to the people who are in this courtroom, no one else. Now, with the exception of juror number 85, we generally are going to have you wait in the courtroom, but I'm going to actually release you back to the courtroom to gather your things, and you can leave for the day except for juror number 85. Because given the hour, it's almost certain we're not going to get to anyone other than one juror, given the amount of time it generally takes. And so I'm going to ask your patience, and the rest of you come back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Same process as how you got through here today, and we'll start with jury selection for the remaining 3 at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Feel free to use any of the hand sanitizer and wipes that are around, and we'll see 3 of you tomorrow. Number 85, if you could remain. Thank you. Okay, juror 85, if you could come on up here. And good afternoon, have a seat. A few things before I turn you over to the attorneys for some questioning. First is I'm going to swear you in so that all your answers are under oath. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, under penalty of perjury, that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. First of all, there's plexiglass in front of you, plexiglass between us, and the lawyers also have plexiglass in front of them. My point being, if you would feel more comfortable or feel it would be necessary to speak clearly to take your mask off, you may do so. Even though I've had 1 vaccine shot so far, I keep this on no matter what, just to be ultra safe. But whether or not you have it on is totally up to you.
Sure.
And even if at some point you take it off and you want to put it back on, feel free. In either case, mask on or mask off, I ask that you, and that's probably about perfect on being close to the mic, because we want to be able to hear you. So don't get too worried about it, because I'll move you if necessary. But I think you're going to be just fine. So with that, let me thank you first for filling out the questionnaire. It gives us a good basis to start from. And is there anything, first of all, was everything true on that questionnaire?
Yes.
Is there anything on the questionnaire that you wanted to add to or change that you can think of right off the top of your head?
I think I called out a couple work concerns. That was based on the previous timing
Okay.
of it being earlier in March. I don't have those concerns
Okay.
any longer.
So no distractions from work related.
Correct.
Any other problems with being here for 4 weeks?
No.
Other than the fact that it's 4 weeks of jury duty.
Right.
Okay. Well, important case, obviously, and it will take some time. But we want to make
Yes.
sure that you aren't going to be distracted by personal things or financial hardship, anything like that.
Correct.
You could make it work the 4
Yes.
weeks? All right, excellent. Now, getting back to the questionnaire, the attorneys will be asking you more specific questions. And you might realize at some point, it's been a few months, that maybe there are things you should add, or maybe something's even inaccurate. Maybe even some of your opinions have evolved. My point being, make sure you feel comfortable saying something different than what's on the questionnaire. If it's accurate, that's what we want to know more than anything else, okay?
Yes.
You weren't supposed to read any newspaper articles or see any media about this case, but we realized with the passage of a few months since the questionnaire that inadvertently you might have been exposed to some information. See a headline, see a news blurb on the TV, something like that. What, if anything, have you been exposed to in the time between the questionnaire and today?
I did see a couple headlines really about jury selection beginning.
Okay.
And then I did hear I guess you could call the headline on the recent settlement
Okay.
that was reached. I don't know the result of the settlement. All I heard was record-breaking settlement, but I don't know any of the details.
Didn't hear any numbers, or?
I didn't. I don't know what the number is.
Okay, let's kind of compare those two. I assume that just being told that jury selection has begun and that really doesn't affect your decision as a juror?
No.
Doesn't affect your partiality?
No.
When you're finished with the questionnaire, at some point you were just asked, could you be fair and impartial? And you said yes. Do you think that the news about the settlement would move you off that position?
No.
Okay, tell me about that, why you think it does or does not affect your ability to be a fair juror in this case.
I don't know the details of it,
Okay.
of what the settlement was really even about. And I believe civil suits are often settled. I don't think that declares guilt one way or another. I think people settle for many reasons.
All right, and you understand that civil suits have different laws, different legal issues to resolve, different from a criminal case. Would you accept that?
Yes.
All right, do you think it's going to bear at all in your mind? For example, if a juror were to say in a deliberation room for some reason, well, what about this settlement? What do you think you'd say to a juror who brought that up if it was not part of the evidence?
If it wasn't part of the evidence, then it's not something that I would consider.
Okay. And that's the bottom line. You've been exposed to information about this case. You know, some might be accurate, some not. But the bottom line is you have to put aside anything you've heard outside this courtroom and even any opinions you may have formed. You know, it's all right to have those opinions. That's not what we're saying. We're saying as a juror you have to focus on what is said and heard in court, to look at all the evidence from what happened in court, and to put everything else aside, including opinions. Can you do that?
Yes.
All right. Did you recognize any witnesses on the witness list?
I did not.
Okay. We saved the easiest one for last. So, what I'm going to do is turn it over to the attorneys. But before that, do you have any questions for me?
No.
Okay. Mr. Nelson, you may inquire as to Juror 85.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for taking the time to fill out your questionnaire. I just have a few general questions to kind of go through first, and then I'm going to come back and ask you some questions about some of your responses to the questionnaire. Would that be okay?
Yep.
All right. I just want to, before I do that, I just want to follow up with your work concerns. You indicated that, I know that in your jury questionnaire you had two kind of principal concerns about serving. One had to do with your employment, and the other had to do with your small child.
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of your employment, one of your concerns was that you weren't going to be paid because you're some type of consultant, not identifying the nature of your job. Is that correct?
I personally will be. My company wouldn't be because I serve clients.
Sure.
So my hourly bill rate is not going to the company, but I have had conversations around that, and it's not a concern of the partners. So.
Okay, so the company is willing to kind of let you go for a while.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. But you'll still be paid, so you'll be able to pay your bills
Yes.
and things
Mhm.
like that. But you do have a small child as well,
Yep. Mhm.
and you'll be able to kind of make childcare arrangements. Family, friends will help if need be.
Yes. Mhm.
And it's possible, I guess the question is, we know for sure that during jury deliberations, the jurors would be what's called sequestered, meaning put in a hotel.
Mhm.
We have no idea how long those deliberations will take.
Mhm.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
All right. It is technically possible that at some point for the trial itself, jurors could be sequestered. It could be 4 weeks, it could be 2 weeks, it could be, we have no idea, right? It depends on what happens. How do you feel about that?
It would be a challenge, more for my husband, but we'll make do what we have to do.
Okay, fair enough. And that's what we just want to make sure is there's not an undue burden on you or your family, right? Okay, so let's assume that you and I were to meet in some other circumstance, social event, professional event, and we strike up a conversation. What are a few things I learn about you during that conversation?
Probably what we've already covered. I'm a working mom and a wife, and that's probably about all.
Okay. Any special interests, hobbies, things of that nature? Or are you just busy with children?
Busy, yes. Spending a lot of time at hockey rinks in the wintertime, but yeah, just busy with work and family.
Okay, great. You obviously had heard about this case before you learned you were a potential juror in this case, right?
Yes.
And so my question is, when you got this packet and were asked to fill it out and it identified that you may be a potential juror in this case, particularly, what was your initial reaction?
Pretty surprised. It was my first time being summoned, and kind of what are the odds of getting on a pretty high-profile case? So surprised, but
All right. Any concerns for your personal safety, safety of your family, COVID-19 concerns, any of that?
I would say some concern, for when juror names are eventually released. I don't know the timing of that. That it would be something I'd have to consider. But generally, I don't have safety concerns coming down here today or immediate concerns.
Okay. What did you think of the government center when you got down here today? I mean, with military and the fencing and all of that.
It was a little unnerving after I found how to get in. It was a little surprising to see that amount of presence, but I understand why.
Okay. So when you say a little concerning, I mean, what was concerning about it?
I just meant unnerving, not concerning. Just
okay. Just kind of like takes your breath away.
Wow,
almost.
right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. When the judge told you this afternoon that we're going to do what we can to keep you confidential, or your identity confidential, how did that make you feel?
Very much appreciated in those efforts.
Okay. And do you, as you referenced, your name at some point in the future may be released. Are you okay with that?
I am. Again, I'd love to know what kind of time frame that looks like, or how you even go about making a determination of that timing. But it is what it is, and it's how these work. So. Okay,
fair enough. Now I know. Well, let me ask you: in your personal or professional life, have you ever been called upon to resolve a conflict between two people?
Yes, probably not in a he said, she said type of fashion, but resolving conflict can be part of my job at times.
again, without identifying where you specifically work, but your job is in sort of the reorganization of corporations, right?
Correct.
All right. And does that mean people have to get fired or potentially laid off?
It can, yes.
Okay. And sometimes people don't like that, I'm assuming?
Correct.
All right. And so that can be a pretty heavy burden, right? I mean,
Yes.
people's well-beings, right?
Mhm.
So kind of, your role, if you were to be selected as a juror in this case, is to kind of deal with a pretty heavy burden and resolve some conflict. Do you understand that?
Yes.
So drawing from your personal or professional experience, what tools do you bring to the table to help, muddle through the evidence and resolve conflict amongst jurors?
A lot of listening, obviously, to, hearing all sides and all perspectives, all opinions, asking a lot of questions to try to kind of get at the root of, differentiating what an opinion is versus what fact might be, ensuring that everybody is in line with what the outcome needs to be. It's probably step number one. And, it's really about listening and just asking questions.
Right. Okay. Now, let's assume that the conflict is between yourself and another juror, which is different than conflict between two other people. Agreed? How do you approach that?
Oh, sure, yes.
Because we're taking down it's a normal conversation, but a little more formal in here.
Yes.
Thank you.
So how do you approach a situation if you're involved in the conflict versus an observer or mediator of a conflict?
I guess, stating again, what the information I know, explaining why I feel a certain way, using information if it's available to back that up. So, trying to make things more data or evidence driven instead of emotional or opinion based. And then, obviously listening to the other party, again, asking questions, and, really just trying to come to a resolution. Ideally, that's the ideal situation is you agree or you agree to disagree. But understanding that, in certain situations, you don't always come to that mutual, agreement.
Right. So you understand that one of the rules that would apply would be a unanimous jury verdict.
Yes.
One way or another. And I guess the question becomes, for you, would you abandon your belief or your principle simply to gain consensus with the group and reach a decision? Or are you the type that's going to kind of dig in your heels and stand your ground?
That's a good question. I would probably stand my ground.
Okay. Would it depend on what the issue is?
Yes, yeah, but yes, if I'm firmly believing in a situation, that's going to be my opinion.
Okay, thanks. In your personal or professional life, have you ever been called upon to determine whether someone is telling the truth about a situation?
Not in my professional life. Maybe trying to think of a situation with my child that may have come up.
Sure. Well, I think that's a good example, right? Someone calls and says your child was involved in this situation, and then you ask your child, did this happen? And your child has a completely different answer, right? how do you determine, is the person reporting the incident telling me the truth, or is my child telling me the truth?
In that situation, I again like to ask a lot of questions because I think you can uncover a lot even by asking the same question in different ways. You can get at very different answers. Again, hearing both sides independently, and then putting the puzzle pieces together really based on what you hear.
Okay. Can you think of a time that you were 100% convinced you were right about something and later learned you were wrong?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. How do you respond to that? I mean, are you kind of blow it off and go, well, lesson learned, or do you take that lesson and apply it to future action?
Oh, absolutely. Take it and apply it. That's how we all learn and grow.
Sure. Now, ultimately, at the end of the case, the judge will instruct you on what the law of this case is.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it may be that you think the judge is wrong, or you think the law should change. Can you apply the law as the judge gives it to you, even if you disagree or think it's wrong?
Yes.
I'm going to just follow up with a few questions on your questionnaire. Again, you had some knowledge about this incident prior to being summoned as a juror, and just like everybody else who's come in, there are varying degrees of what you know, what you heard, what you talked about, right?
Yes.
So it's perfectly okay, and you have formed opinions about this case. Again, perfectly okay, all right? So I'm not going to try to trick you. I'll read the question. I'll read what you wrote if I have a question about it. And if you want, I may ask you to explain a few things, okay?
Yes.
First, though, there's some questions on the questionnaire and some reference to a video that was taken. There were several videos that have been released publicly, and I want to make sure which video you're referring to, so we're on the same page. Does that make sense?
Yes.
There was a video that was taken by a bystander. That video got uploaded to Facebook, I believe, and then from there it went viral, became a news story. That's one video. Then there were some body camera videos that were released from police officers, and then there were some security camera from local businesses that were released. Did you see one of those, all of them, or do you not remember?
I do remember seeing them. I don't know the source. So I don't know if it was bystander or security cameras. I don't know what the source was. They were the clips on the news. So
okay,
that's what I saw.
That was kind of my follow-up question, was the videos that you saw, did you see them like in the news, or did you go on to social media and look for like a longer, fuller length version, so to speak?
No, just what was shown on the news.
Okay. You were asked, I think generally we're probably talking about the same video. It appears to show Mr. Chauvin and Mr. Floyd's arrest, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You indicated that you had seen those videos 6 or more times. Is that because you saw it so frequently on the news, or because you watched it intentionally 6 or more times?
Due to the news.
Okay. Now, you were asked if you had formed a general impression of Mr. Chauvin, and you indicated that it was somewhat negative. And when asked why, you wrote, "They appeared to take little action despite the pleas of George and bystanders." So I guess the question is, what was it that caused you to have this negative, somewhat negative opinion about Mr. Chauvin?
It was really just my perception of what I saw on the news.
Right. Did you ever do any sort of investigation, kind of look what happened before, what happened after?
I did not.
Okay. And the question ultimately is that during the course of this trial, evidence will be presented. Mm-hmm. Witnesses will testify. There may be exhibits. If we're talking about a 4-week trial, it's going to be a fairly sizable number, right? Can you put what you saw kind of to the side and judge this case exclusively on the evidence as it's presented in court?
Yes, believe so.
Okay. Is it a yes or I believe so?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you understand under the law, Mr. Chauvin is presumed innocent.
Yes, I do.
So you can start kind of with a clean slate, ground zero, presume him innocent.
Yes.
And will you do that?
Yes.
You were also asked about your general impression of Mr. Floyd. You wrote neutral. And when asked why, you said, I only know that George died as a result of this encounter. I do not know what his actions were prior to this taking place. Did you ever learn anything about what happened before?
I did not.
Okay. And you indicate that you knew he died as a result of this encounter. Did you form an opinion that Mr. Chauvin was responsible for Mr. Floyd's death?
No. I never heard, what a cause of death was. So ultimately I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. And ultimately, much of the evidence that is admitted in this case may center around that very issue. So again, you can listen to the evidence as it's presented in court and make your decision based on that and not any opinions or information you may have learned beforehand?
Yes.
You were asked whether you or your friends, your family members, or coworkers had discussed this matter, or whether you had posted any opinion online. Do you recall?
I've not posted about it online. The only conversations I had with coworkers were really just checking in with how people were feeling, mainly after the riots were happening downtown, just checking in on people, making sure everyone was doing well.
Say, do you have friends or coworkers that live in the downtown or in the general area where the riots were taking place?
Yeah, a few coworkers. Mm-hmm.
And so were you more concerned for their physical safety, and that's what you mean by checking in?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that leads into the next question. One of the questions you were asked about whether there was a negative or positive effect as a result of the protests that occurred after Mr. Floyd's death. And you wrote both. I think there are both negative and positive effects that have resulted. Can you tell me what the negative is and what the positive is?
Sure. Negative was, obviously there was a lot of damage done to businesses and probably homes, destruction and, fires and that was obviously negative. The positive things that I see that came out of it were, really giving people a voice that maybe didn't feel heard, and getting people rallied around some of the issues that they feel they face today.
Okay. And you understand ultimately this trial is not about broader social issues.
Yes.
And regardless of your opinion on those, do you feel you can be a fair and impartial juror?
I do.
And you would base your, again, decision on the evidence and not your perception of whatever social issues may exist.
Right, yes.
You were asked or presented with a series of statements, just sort of blanket statements, and you were asked to rank your opinion from the range of some strongly agree to strongly disagree. Do you remember that generally?
Yes.
And ultimately, I'm going to just cover a couple of these with you. One of the statements reads, blacks and other minorities do not receive equal treatment as whites in the criminal justice system, and you somewhat agreed with that statement. Can you explain why you somewhat agreed with that statement?
It's really just a perception that I have based on, what I hear. I have no data or information to back that opinion up. It's really just, what you hear in the media.
Sure. One of the questions was about the media, and it said discrimination is not as bad as the media makes it out to be, and you had no opinion of that. So the media, do you think the media conflates it or understates it?
I don't know.
Okay. You were asked whether police in your community make you feel safe, and you checked that you strongly agree with that.
Yes.
And you were asked about your position on defunding the Minneapolis Police Department, and you took no opinion. Why?
Honestly, I don't know enough about that to have an opinion. I'm not sure exactly what it means.
Okay.
Or what effect that would have on the police.
Okay. You were asked or provided with the statement, because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second guess decisions they make while on duty, and you somewhat disagreed with that. Why?
Police officers are human. They're not robots that are programmed to all behave in the exact same way. So I feel like, as humans, they can make mistakes as well. And, if there's a case in which people feel like anyone was mistreated in any way, I think they should be asked about it, and asked to explain why any certain events took place.
Okay. You were asked a couple of questions about both Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. You took a neutral response to both, and you wrote, I do not know enough information about this cause to have an opinion based on facts.
Yes.
Do you have an emotional response to either of those causes?
I don't.
You were asked, or you identified that you have some relatives who work in the medical profession.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If you were to be a juror on this case, would you, and you hear medical testimony, would you call your relative and say, hey, this is what they're saying, what do you think? Teach me about how this works?
No.
Okay. You were asked a series of questions about your opinions regarding the justice system, and one of the questions reads, do you believe our criminal justice system works? Why or why not? And your response was, I believe it works, but there's room for improvement. Where do you see there's room for improvement?
That's a tough one.
I know it may not be your area of expertise, but
definitely not. It's more of a general statement, and I find the perfect process is really hard to come by. So I believe there's room for improvement in everything we do. Again, humans are involved in the justice system, so there's always room for improvement when humans are involved.
Fair enough. Lastly, you were asked if you wanted to serve as a juror in this case. Again, you checked the not sure box, and you wrote very high profile, potential to be targeted in a negative way, and the potential length of the trial would be difficult due to the job and family. I think we've alleviated the job and family issues.
Yes.
Would you be so concerned about your personal safety or your family safety as a result of your verdict that it would cause you to vote a particular way to avoid what you view as a potential targeting?
No.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. If I may have a few minutes, Your Honor.
Sure.
Mr. Slisher.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, juror number 85, you listed that you previously lived 18 years in an unnamed river town. Is that your childhood home?
Yes.
And then you left the state of Minnesota for some period of time. Is that right?
Yes.
Lived in Wisconsin. Did you just go across the river? Did you go far?
Not too far, just for school.
Okay. So when you were living in Wisconsin, were you kind of in the western Wisconsin area?
Yes.
Okay. Reading your job description, I don't want you to give away, where you work specifically, but help me understand what exactly do you do as a organizational management consultant? What does that mean?
So generally I help organizations transition through change. And that change could be any number of things. It could be organizational change. It could be large transformations. They could be digital or technology type of changes. So I focus more on the people side of getting people to, change behaviors, ways of working. There could be a lot of things involved in that. There could be org design work. There could be, shifts in where people work, how they work. So it's really helping organizations, typically leadership teams of those organizations, just navigate through times of change.
So give me an idea of the size of your clients, not how many you have, but like the organizations themselves.
That varies pretty greatly. I work with some local companies and all the way up to global companies.
Okay. And the types of change that you're helping them navigate, that could include technology changes, implementing different things to make them more efficient? Is that?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And personnel changes as well?
Yes.
What about like corporate culture? If there have been issues with an organization that, say, has experienced some instances of sexual harassment or discrimination, do you help companies navigate through culture changes as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How do you do that, and how did you get a background doing that?
That's a great question. Starting with background, it was kind of an evolution. You start, or my career path anyway, started more in the probably technology side. You kind of get good at that and get good at, making or helping organizations move in a new direction. And then it just evolves over time with experience. You kind of work into more of the complex issues or things that face companies, like culture. It's not, yesterday you press the B button and tomorrow you press F. That's pretty straightforward. But when you're talking about culture, it's pretty significant in getting people to really change their mindsets and how they think about the work they do.
And can you just describe a particular challenging culture change climate that you've helped a company navigate?
I worked with a company who was not performing, was underperforming pretty significantly to the point where they were looking at closing, which would have affected thousands of employees. And we did a lot of things around, there were obviously a lot of efficiency, things that needed to kind of be implemented. But with that, we also needed to help shape people's thinking around how can we as a company be more efficient? Do I, need to do X, Y, and Z? Do I need to always travel to go see various partners? So just really getting people to think more in a cost-conscious, effective manner. Really getting employees even down to what I call line level employees of what can you do in your day-to-day work that can help. What's slowing you down, what's getting in your way, how can we make this more efficient? So really engaging the whole company at all levels. It wasn't just a CEO saying this is what we're going to go do. It was really engaging everybody and having a voice in what that looked like.
That actually sounds really hard. It sounds like a hard job.
It is.
Yeah. So you're trying to, not just have a CEO say, this is what's going to happen. We need an attitude change. Here's what your new attitude is.
Right.
You're trying to get people to kind of buy in.
Yes.
Have you then, in a larger organization, I'm assuming you've had to work through areas of diversity and inclusion in order to get buy-in from all members of the organization?
Diversity and inclusion in particular as a...
Yes.
I have not played in a D&I specific work.
How are you, I guess, in helping an organization through any kind of change, able to get buy-in from all members of the organization, no matter what their role or background is?
It really starts with identifying, who is it that we need to move and how does that impact what they do today. And a lot of times you identify multiple different groups. Not everybody's the same. So you have different groups within a company. You might have people that have been there for 50 years, and changing the mindset at that point is going to be very difficult. You might have someone that's just joined 6 months ago, and it's not going to be as hard for them. So making sure that you understand kind of, I guess, the demographics of the company and the employees we're working with, and then tailoring the approach you take to each of those groups, also involving them as much as possible in what does the future look like, and again giving people a voice to be part of it, and if they're able to be part of something like that and feel like they're heard, and are able to, it gives them a sense of ownership in it, and also in seeing it be successful.
Thank you. I'm going to shift topics a little bit here and ask you if you've ever known anyone, had a close friend or loved one or family member who struggled with drug addiction or alcohol addiction?
I don't.
Do you have an opinion, if you were to hear about a person who, say, struggled with drug or alcohol addiction, would you have an opinion about that person? That maybe, say, for example, some people might say if you are taking illegal drugs and something happens to you, you have yourself to blame. What do you think of that statement?
I disagree with that statement, and I'm not an expert, but I believe there are addiction is addiction, and I don't think a lot of people necessarily choose to. No one would choose to have addiction, I would assume, as part of their life. So no, I wouldn't make a judgment on that.
Okay. You also indicated that you have a pretty strong faith in the police in your community.
Yes.
You agree? Yet you acknowledge that there are the media has indicated that instances of discrimination, and that maybe in some instances police do not treat people of color the same, or blacks or people of color the same as whites.
Mm-hmm.
You agree with that?
Yes.
And I'm just interested in what you would base it on. Have you had conversations with, say, friends or coworkers who've shared their own experiences with you?
Again, it's mostly what I hear in the media. I don't have a personal experience with a situation like that. So it's mostly what I'm hearing in the news.
You were accidentally locked out of a store without having something without paying for it, or had that experience?
Have I ever?
Yeah.
Yes, but I think I probably set off the alarm system maybe, or gotten too close to the door. But otherwise, no.
Kind of inadvertent, shocking, right?
Yes.
And how would you expect to be treated by the police if you made it all the way to your car with something you hadn't paid for in your community?
How would I expect to be treated? I guess respectfully, and probably questioned. Did I mean to exit the store with this, or why do I have this and I didn't pay for it?
And do you feel that you would cooperate with the police?
Yes.
And do you think that's an important thing for someone to do, to cooperate with the police when you're interacting with them?
Yes.
And some people might say that if you don't cooperate with the police and something happens, then you have yourself to blame. You should have cooperated with the police. What do you think of that statement?
I would generally agree with that statement.
Okay. And why is that?
I guess, I've probably been taught or learned along the way that, you respect police and you do what they ask. I, again, don't have any personal experience with that. But so anyone, that chose not to, do something a police officer asked, and then experienced any repercussions from that, it's the same if I was speeding and I decided not to pull over. If there's a police behind me with his lights on and I decide not to pull over, that's on me.
Mm-hmm. You indicated in the questionnaire that you might have find some difficulty in viewing graphic images.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us about that? Is there any particular reason for it, or is it just in general?
No, just in general. It's not something I would seek out to watch.
If you were called to serve as a juror in this matter, you would be viewing some images that you may find disturbing. Knowing that that's part of the jury service and part of the requirements here, would you be able to do that, or would you find just graphic images so disturbing that you wouldn't be able to focus on the evidence and really put those images in the proper context?
Yes.
That you would find that too difficult, or you would not? That was a terrible question. So.
I'm not sure what the question was anymore. Yes, I would be able to, to watch what was being presented.
Okay. All right. Thank you. If I may have a moment, Your Honor. Thank you. Mr. Slisher. Thank you very much, Your Honor. We pass for cause.
You will be on this jury. I think what I'm going to do is let you go for the day with instructions not to pay attention to any news, at least tonight. Try and avoid the news generally. We've been telling people don't read any articles or pay attention to anything about this case. But I think, given the exposure and the saturation, try and avoid the news generally as much as you can. The deputy will take some paperwork from you. We'll have you report March 29th at 9 a.m. If we contact you, make sure you answer the phone in case there's any change in schedule, but otherwise we'll see you on March 29th. Any questions?
No.
In fact, we will contact you before then because there might be instructions regarding parking or just generally if there's a time frame difference.
Okay.
But just to remind you if nothing else.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, sir. We're back at jury number 9. Is that correct? I think that's what I have. So we're back where we started this morning, but it's better than being behind. So that was the last juror for the day. It's 4:15, so we'll break until 8:30 tomorrow. I will entertain the argument that the state wishes to make regarding Dr. Vinson. The state requested briefing instead of argument on the May 6, 2019 defense Spriegel, so we'll hold that off till Friday. I anticipate just entering rulings. At that time, I still have under advisement the motions for change of venue and continuance. Those I think we will have an answer for you on Friday. In the meantime, I told the defense and the state that at a minimum to deal with some of this new pretrial publicity, this is not indicate a firm decision on the other motions, but I at a minimum will allow the defense to have 3 additional peremptory and the state to have 1 to deal with these additional recent pretrial publicity issues that have been created. So, anything else for the record before we recess? Mr. Slisher? Anything?
Yes, Your Honor. Just for the record, and you did indicate that to defense counsel prior to the questioning of jurors this morning, and so they were aware of that, the extra preempts during the questioning today.
And also, Mr. Schaefer has reminded me that we should put on the record that the parties have met and are in agreement on striking the following jurors for cause based on the questionnaire alone: 108, 112, 122, 124, and 125. And I'm reading that from Mr. Nelson's email.
I haven't pulled it up yet, but I trust the court.
And I read his email yesterday, and that was our accurate rendition of our discussion.
All right, great. Is there anything else, Mr. Nelson, that you wish to make of the record?
Not for the record, Your Honor.
Okay. I think we'll have a chambers conference on some administrative and other matters. So with that, we stand in recess until 8:30 tomorrow morning. Thank you.